stress on our final moments in this life. There is a period that comes prior to our death called sakaratul maut. Our traditions tell us that when we reach this stage before our death, the devil, the shaitan, will take advantage of our weaknesses. We will be very weak then. If we had committed sins in the past and we didn't ask for forgiveness, these sins will weigh in and the shaitan will come hovering above our head, trying to take our faith from us. I told you the story of Mostafa, who was a worshipper during the time of the Israelites. Suddenly the ending for him was an unpleasant ending. He became an unbeliever. He became a kafir after bowing down before the shaitan. And we have many traditions, many supplications that we have to recite to make sure that our ending is a pleasant one, is a righteous one. Ayatollah Gulpaigani, late Gulpaigani, who passed away 13 years ago in the city of Qom. He was a supreme marja. He said, I had a friend who was also a scholar. He said, I visited him while he was on his deathbed, before he died. 3 or 4 days before his death, I went to his house to visit him. He was lying on his bed, very sick, very ill. He said to me something very strange. He said to me that I don't believe that God is just. I think that God is an oppressor. I said, how could you say that? He said that if God was just, things would have been different for me. How so? He said, we are both from Gulpaigan, from the same city in Iran. You became a supreme marja, and I'm a nobody. This is why I believe God is not just. In the final days, he changes course, and he chooses to worship the shaitan instead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he dies as a kafir. No matter who this guy is. There was a man in the holy city of Najaf. He became very ill, and he was about to die. His students come to his house. When they see him in the conditions he was in, one of the students say that we should tell him to recite the shahadatain. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
In case he dies, it's a critical moment, it's a crucial moment. So they say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. He refuses. He says no. Say it. No. Say it, what's going to happen? You're not going to lose anything. Even if you live, you're not going to lose anything. And then he said, I will never say it. Don't ask me again. Then he became unconscious. Then several weeks later, he became well again. He didn't die. Several months later, in the streets of Najaf, he meets with one of his students. All his students choose not to attend these lessons anymore. So he meets one of them. He says to him that, I'm not asking you to attend my lessons, but I just want to know the reason why you all abandoned me. He said, to be honest with you, you were about to die. You were very sick. And when we asked you to say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, the shahadatain, you said, no way, I'm not going to say it. So we thought you're not a good person. He said, now that you asked, I'll reveal to you the real reason why I didn't say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. He said, yes, I was about to die. When you said Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, suddenly I saw someone standing before my eyes. He said to me that if you say the shahadatain, I will kill your son. And I love my son. I wanted to say it, but he threatened me again. I couldn't. I'll kill your son. That's why I said to you, I'm not going to say the shahadatain. Go away. And now I am asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make me witness the death of my son before my death time approaches. Because if I'm going to be tested with the same test, I will not pass. All our ties with this life will weigh in at the very last moments. If the ties were strong, it would be very hard to sever the ties. That's why the Our death will be very excruciating, very painful. And what matters is these last moments. Of course, again, there are factors that lead to a pleasant outcome or an unpleasant outcome. But the tradition tells us that مَنْ كَانَ آخَرُ قَوْلِهِ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, whoever's last words are لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, such a person will go to paradise. وَمَنْ كَانَ آخِرُ قَوْلِهِ اللَّهُمَّ صَلِّ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ,
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
whoever's last words are reciting the salawat on the Prophet and his progeny, such a person will go to paradise. Why? Because this is indicative of the person's righteous death. When you say La ilaha illallah, that means you're on the right track, you're on the right path. That's why you'll go to paradise. And now there are factors. There are certain elements that would cause a person to change course at the very last moment, whether it's a good one or a bad one. With regards to husnul aqibah, a righteous death, our traditions tell us that kindness is the characteristic that you should look for to make you have a good fate. To be kind to others, to help people, to volunteer, to assess people. If there are people that are in need of your help, you would help them voluntarily. These are one of the traits that help us have a good final fate. The tradition tells us that our Prophet ﷺ, during the Mi'raj, during the ascension to the heavens, he saw a woman who was an ill repute woman. A woman that followed her desire, satisfied her desire, irrespective of the boundaries of God and the religion of Islam and the religion of God. A bad woman that went to paradise, went to heaven. The Prophet says, Ya Ilahi, God, what is the reason? What made this woman end up in paradise, although she was a very bad woman? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells our Prophet that the reason why she ended up in paradise is because one day she was in the middle of the desert. She saw a dog that was thirsty. And the dog was near a well, but the dog can't reach to take out the water. That's why the woman went there. There was no bucket. She used her clothes, she ripped them, and she soaked it in water, and then she began dripping water inside the mouth of the dog. And this led the woman to become a good woman and end up in paradise. A tradition also tells us that a man by the name of Ahmad al-Kufi, who was a companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, one day he goes to the Imam in the Holy Mosque of Kufa. He says to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I recently purchased a new house, and I would like to invite you for dinner or for lunch to come over. The Imam said to him, unfortunately, I can't accept your invitation. He said, why? He said, because you only invite rich people. I would like to be with the poor. So he said to the Imam, okay, I'll cancel the invitation and I will only invite poor people. The Imam accepted. The Imam went to his house. The Imam then said to him that, I congratulate you for the new house, but there's something wrong with the house. He said, what is it, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen? He said, had you told me beforehand, I would have given you another advice. He said to him, what is it? He said, the mosque is a bit too far from the mosque. Sorry, the house is too far away from the mosque of Kufa. If you told me beforehand, I would have told you of another property, another house that is much closer. He said to him, okay. He went inside his room. He brought 1,000 golden dinars. He placed it before the Imam. He said to him, there you go. The Imam took out a pen and a paper, and then he said to him that the house that I would like to purchase for you is adjacent to the Prophet's palace in paradise. If I take this money, if you allow me to take this money and distribute it to the poor people, I will guarantee you a location adjacent and next to the Prophet's house in paradise. He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'min, this is what I'm looking for. Go ahead and do it. Amir al-Mu'min took the money and he distributed it to the poor people. And then the man became sick several days later. He told his wife to place the paper on his chest when he dies, before burial. He wants the document to be with him in the grave. He dies several days later. Amir al-Mu'mineen himself comes to bury him. But before his death, people began to talk and say that Amir al-Mu'mineen is selling estates and properties in paradise. He's charging people money to buy them places in heaven. The guy dies. When Amir al-Mu'mineen buries him, a white bird suddenly appears, having a paper in its mouth. Then threw the paper on the grave. They looked at the paper, they examined it. There were an inscription on the paper saying that the promise that was made by Ali ibn Abi Talib, Allah fulfilled the promise. And that's why when we become kind, when we show kindness to especially our relatives, the people that are in need of our help, this will lead to a good fate, especially to our relatives. If we have relatives that are in need of our help, whether it's financial or any kind of help, we're encouraged to help them, to show kindness, to be kind, and this will lead to a good fate. Especially if your relative is someone who has severed his ties with you, someone who doesn't socialize with you, someone who doesn't like you anymore, someone who doesn't visit you, someone who doesn't call you. If you have such a relative, help them if they're in need of help. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, before his death, he told his children to help out people, especially of the circle of the relatives of the Imam, who were against the Imam. Being against the Imam is an advantage for you if you help them. Show kindness. Another tradition tells us that there was a man that the Prophet saw in paradise who had no good deeds whatsoever. He was in paradise. The Prophet of Islam says, Ya Ilahi, why did this man end up in paradise? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him, because one day as he was walking in the street, he found a thorn that could pierce the foot of people walking in the same path. He removed it, and this became the main cause, the main reason for this man to end up in paradise. So the first factor is to be kind. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pays attention to details. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very meticulous when it comes to the things that we do. Especially the small things, the things that we think are insignificant, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveres them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala magnifies them. Our traditions tell us, this story is mentioned in the Quran, you all know what happened between Musa and Al-Khidr. The final thing that Al-Khidr did while Musa was there, they went inside a village. They asked them for food, but they refused to help them, to give them anything. When they wanted to leave the village, Khidr alayhi salam, he saw a wall that had collapsed. He began to rebuild the wall. Musa says to him, لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. I mean, you could ask the people of the village to reward you in exchange for the favor you're doing. Khidr alayhi salam then says to him that we will part each other, we will not be together anymore, but I'll tell you why I rebuilt the wall. He says to him, why? He said, because the wall belongs to two orphans. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. They had a father who was a good man. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to reward the man. Our traditions tell us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or Khidr, is not speaking about their immediate father. He's speaking about their grandfather. 70 generations ago, there was a man who was a good man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved, because whatever we do,